watching the Homeschooling Science Test. Today, we are doing our botany class and studying about roots.
Roots? What kind of roots? Well, we're going to talk about... So last time we kind of talked about all of the different things about roots that are important. Like how they help us keep soil in place, right? Prevent erosion, absorb nutrients for the plants. That's like the big thing. Today we're actually going to talk about things that they're sort of roots, but not. And some of like the special structures. Have you heard of like how they say like carrots and stuff that like we eat the roots?
Yeah, because the carrot is the root. The carrot,
yeah.
The part that you eat, and then the root.
And like onions and things like that.
Turnips.
So some of those are actually it's like the carrot, that's the root, but like in an onion and stuff, it's like an underground part of the plant, but it's not actually part of the root system. But it's like a special structure.
Why are carrots orange?
Because of some chemical in them, beta carotene, I think it is.
Not all carrots are orange. They can be purple too.
Yeah, I think they could also be yellow and
blue. Purple. There's purple carrots.
I'll take your word
I was
for
watching a video and they found purple carrots.
Well, if it's on the internet, then it's definitely true.
Really?
No. That's not a thing. That's like the opposite. Don't believe everything you see on the internet, kids. Except us, we're okay.
Yeah. I think
Usually.
I have seen a purple carrot in real life though. Carrots.
Not something I'm really familiar with, but I do think you're right. Anyway. We're getting off topic. So today we're going to talk about, like, the first thing is taproots versus fibrous roots.
Yay, taproot.
So when we say a taproot, we're talking about like a big thick root in the center with like little tiny branches coming off it.
It's like a ton of them.
Yeah, and a fibrous root, so like usually when you think about roots, you're thinking fibrous roots. Like when you go out in the yard and like most plants that you pull up out of the ground and you look at their roots, it's going to be like fibrous.
This is my fibrous root.
Where there's all those root fibers, all the branches coming off them, and that's pretty normal. So a taproot is like you have like one thick center root. So I think dandelions, I believe, have like a taproot.
They're hard to pull.
Also, yeah. So that's like a pretty common one. So if you see a dandelion, you can pull it out, and it's hard to pull out by the root, but you can, if you can, then, you know, pay attention to the difference in the dandelion root versus, you know, like something like grass or whatever. Also, don't pull up like everything in your yard. Your parents might hate us. You know, do this it's like an experiment in a controlled sense. Don't go pulling up every plant in your yard. That might not be a good thing. Anyway, but do some of it. Looking at plants and their roots, always good. Okay, so yeah, so taproot, and then like carrots we mentioned. Carrots is another good example of that.
Taproot.
It's that like taproot, that big, thick center root, and then little hairs and stuff coming off of it.
The onions do have roots. It's just at like the bottom of the onion, and they're not like huge.
Yes.
It's like a tiny.
Yes. So onions and the other stuff we're going to talk about belong to a category called geophytes. Don't worry about memorizing that word. I don't think it's that big of a deal. But so geophytes, it's kind of like underground plant structures. Okay. And these are things that they're kind of like, oftentimes we think of them as like roots or like part of the roots. They're technically not. They're kind of just, again, they're geophytes. They're these underground plant structures. So onions would be a good example of that. So onions like a bulb. And so you have, like you said, it's attached to the roots. So you can have like roots coming off the bottom of the onion, but the onion itself is not actually like part of the root system. Okay?
They do kind of look like bulbs.
Well, yeah, it's because that's what they are. That's why they call them bulbs. So that would be like onions and garlic. That's another example of like a bulb. So garlic, when you buy garlic from the store, that's what you're buying. It's kind of like an underground bulb that's part of the plant. Very similar to like how an onion is. So bulbs, that's like onions and garlic. There's also rhizomes. Is another type of geophyte.
Can't remember what it.
A rhizome, if you remember from reading the book, it's like an underground stem. And it kind of, the kind of neat thing about the rhizomes is sort of like it grows horizontally. So it's kind of like the way the plant like spreads out and then can grow up again from that.
Wait.
So an example of this would be like bamboo does this.
So like basically a stick like this for the root?
And again, they might kind of look like roots, but again, the main difference is even if something looks like a root, it's not a root unless it has that function of like absorbing nutrients and pulling out of the ground and so on and so forth. So like rhizomes, because they're like underground stems and they might look different from normal stems, but they're not roots because their function isn't for like absorbing water and nutrients. It's just kind of, again, it's kind of like a way for the plant to like spread out horizontally and then grow up from these different spots. So another one is a corm, not a corn, a corm.
It's like a
Corm.
It's basically a bowl.
It's like a bulb except they're solid. There's not like any really common plants that I could find that had an example of this. It's not a very common thing. I've
Corn?
never seen one.
Does corn?
No, corn doesn't. So just know that it exists, and that's good enough. So tubers are the next one, and a tuber is, again, it's actually considered part of the stem, like an underground part of the stem. That's like a big lump. Okay. And so these tubers, usually they do have like buds on them that
At the end?
roots and stems and stuff can grow from, but it's not, even though it's underground, it's not part of the root system, it's technically a stem and it's just like a big bulb.
Like a tater.
Like a tater. Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. Yeah, so I was going to say, do you guys know a good example of that? Yeah, potatoes. So potatoes are a great example of a tuber. So again, oftentimes when we talk about potatoes, sometimes people will say like, oh, they're kind of like part of the roots. But technically they're not. They're part of the stem. It's kind of its own thing. It's connected to the root system, but it's not part of the root system. So this is kind of an important thing to think about, especially for when you're gardening, that when you're planting potatoes and when you like harvest or you plant potatoes from seed potatoes, remember we said earlier, like potatoes are angiosperms, they grow flowers, they grow seeds just like everything else. And you can plant potatoes from seeds. But oftentimes, like when you're gardening and you grow potatoes, you have what's called like a seed potato, just like a little tiny potato, and you can plant that. And because it's a tuber, and what we call like the eyes of the potato, you guys know, like if you look at a potato, like the little not bulbs, but like the little spots on it that we call eyes.
Mm-hmm. They grow out.
Those are like little buds where the roots and stems can grow from. So if that's...
And then you could get... So if you get one potato, you could get a couple potatoes from that.
Yeah. And you can even, like if you have a potato and you like cut it in half or whatever and you plant both of those, they can even, grow individually into their own new plant.
Or you can just cut like a whole potato in a couple slices, but you don't want to like cut an eye in half. Or try not to.
The important thing to keep in mind is when you're doing that, you're actually cloning the plant. Okay? Mm-hmm. So when we talk about cloning, you might think of like, I don't know, things grown in a lab or whatever. But when we talk about cloning, we mean something where the new plant or the new thing has the same DNA as the original. So anytime that you're growing like potatoes from seed potatoes, or in your chapter we talked about like rooting plants, right? How you can take a stem and you can sort of cut the stem off sometimes, and you can sort of plant that and encourage it to grow roots. And you can get a new plant that way. Or if you do like root transplants, like there's lots of ways where you can kind of take a part of a plant and kind of cut that off and get a new plant from it, right? Anytime that you do that, you're making a clone. Okay, so the clone, because it's coming from that plant, it's not a baby, it's not coming from a seed. It's genetically identical to the parent, and so that's why we call it a clone. So the only way that you get something that is a plant that is genetically different is if you grow it from seeds. This is important because let's say you planted like a whole field of potatoes, and they all came from like seed potatoes, and you just kept keeping seed potatoes and planting your garden over and over again. It's all going to be clones of that same plant. And when you do that over and over again and have like a lot of it, you don't have any genetic variety. It's all identical. And so typically that means your plants, your garden, whatever, they're going to be more susceptible to disease. Every living thing, like your DNA degrades over time. This is true for animals and plants and everything too. And so it's just not a great idea to keep cloning plants like over and over and over and over and over and over again. Eventually you want to grow from seeds. So I think they say, you can do it for like a few generations. You can do it for a few times. But after that, if you keep cloning, so if you keep just kind of growing, again, if you've got a potato garden and every year you're doing seed potatoes and then harvesting potatoes and using those to seed and harvesting potatoes and using those to seed, you can get away with that for a few years. But after, a few generations, after a few years, because you're not introducing any genetic variations and the DNA can sort of degrade over time, your plants are going to start getting like less and less healthy. And eventually, if you keep doing it long enough, your plants won't live anymore, and you won't be able to grow them. They won't be strong enough. Now, it might take a long time to do that. I don't know exactly how long it would take for them to get that bad, but they say after a few generations, you might start seeing some negative effects in your plants because you're just cloning over and over again. Okay.
I got a gardening experience.
Would you like to share your gardening experience with the class?
A couple years ago, a bag of potatoes started to get roots.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I took those potatoes and I cut them up and I put them in some pots and I watered them and they grew. And then they died. I think we got a couple potatoes out of them.
Nice. Why'd they die?
Because it was like too hot and I didn't know how to care for it.
So that's really all we had to talk about today. I know, kind of a short lesson, but we're kind of back after having a bunch of family visiting and sickness and all that stuff. So good quick episode. Like I said, I think one of the main like takeaways that's kind of a practical idea that you can remember and take home with you, and it is, you know, keeping in mind this idea of you don't want to be cloning plants like over and over and over and over and over again. And that's what you're doing, you know, anytime you're growing something that's not from seed, whether it's from a stem, a clipping, you know, growing from a potato or from like an onion bulb, you're essentially like cloning that plant, which is fine. But if you like keep doing that over and over again, there can be some negative results. On that note, you jumped the gun. You have been watching The Homeschooling Scientist. Peace out.